Remaking an anime, or rather, readapting a work, is a rare but not necessarily new thing that we have seen happen recently. Usually, the case is as follows. A very popular manga was once adapted into an anime many years ago, but now some time has passed, and those stories that were so popular before have now slightly faded in the minds of the viewing public. So, let's readapt that original work for a new bunch of fans who have never seen the original. Some recent examples, if you'll permit me here. We have Berserk, originally adapted in late 1997, readapted into a series of films starting in 2010. Hunter x Hunter, originally adapted in 1999, readapted in 2011. Sailor Moon, originally adapted in 1992, readapted into Sailor Moon Crystal in 2014, and finally, Dragon Ball Z, which had an original adaptation that ran from 1989 to 1996 and was readapted into Dragon Ball Z Kai in 2009. Now, those weren't the only examples, they're just some of the more well-known ones. And the common trend between those ones is the amount of time between the adaptations. 12 years, 13 years, 22, 23 years. Plenty of time for the older versions to fade, and for these new adaptations to have plenty of time solo in the spotlight. But today we are talking about Fullmetal Alchemist, originally adapted in 2003, ending in 2004, readapted in 2009. Only 5 years exist between the end of the first and the start of the second. And this has caused quite a bit of fan tempers to flare depending on how much you revere the original manga. So let me start by saying I am going to assume that you have either watched the original adaptation at this point or have read the manga. And if you haven't done either of those things, I recommend you go do so. And that's because in order to explain the differences between this and the original adaptation, there are some things that to some people might be considered spoilery. You know, just so I can sort of pinpoint what parts of the plot I'm talking about, though I will actually do my best to keep everything down to a minimum. I just can't guarantee it. Also, unlike my review of the 2003 adaptation, where I pretended that Brotherhood does not exist, I'm not gonna do that in reverse, mainly because 2003 totally existed when Brotherhood came out, though the reverse was not true. So I'm not gonna try and pretend that 2003 didn't exist when talking about Brotherhood, mainly because I have this theory where the creators kind of expected you to have already watched 2003. And if that theory of mine holds true, it does change things. So let's have a little chat to see if this more recent adaptation is worth your time. Spoilers, it totally is! Ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Arcada, and welcome to Glass Reflection. Today, the second adaptation of the original manga Fullmetal Alchemist. Today we're talking about Brotherhood. Let's jam. Now, there's going to be quite a bit of the overall story and the characters that I'm just going to kind of gloss over here because I think I did an apt description of them in my 2003 review, and if you haven't watched that, you can go click on the thing over here because I don't really want to repeat myself. And yeah. Now, up until around episode 12 or 13, Brotherhood is almost identical to the 2003 adaptation in terms of general story. Most of the main cast is introduced, several major plot events have occurred, and at present the brothers Elric just met up with their teacher Izumi Curtis. It's around this point where the divergence between the two adaptations occurs, as the meaning between those characters is rather different in several ways, and then immediately Brotherhood takes off into a plotline not seen in the original. And it is from this point where I think Brotherhood starts to hit its stride. Shortly after this point, we see the arrivals of the characters Ling Yao and Mei Chang, revealing that there is indeed more to the world outside of Amestris, and, you know, what remains of Ishbal. We also see the adventures up in the north, with the soldiers from Fort Briggs and their commander Olivier Armstrong, and the constant foreshadowing to the great threat that is much larger in scale than anything that the original adaptation had to offer. However, before the divergence point, Brotherhood leaves a lot to be desired. The way that Brotherhood handled these things were not bad per se, but I always got the feeling that the creators of Brotherhood were making it under the assumption that a good chunk of the viewership had already seen the 2003 version. And that's not technically an unfair assumption considering the massive popularity that that original series had. And you know, considering that it had only been 5 years, that version wasn't really that old yet. So it's safe to assume that it was still fairly fresh in the minds of the people who watched this new one when it was airing. What leads me to consider all of this is just how things were handled early on. The introduction of the majority of major characters is all done in episode 1, with an anime-only plotline involving anime-only character Isaac McDougal. As such, instead of being generally introduced to the major players through related plotlines, they are all thrown together at once, which in some cases drowns out the importance of the more minor players on the outset. Unless, of course, you are already familiar with them. The exclusion of several plotlines from the manga as well, including the Uswell incident and the battle with the Blue Squad, while explainable, bother me. Uswell in both the manga and the original adaptation served two purposes. One, to further show off the limits of Edward's moral compass, demonstrating that he is not above trickery if it means benefiting people. And secondly, to introduce the character Lieutenant Yoki, who later becomes a more prominent minor character in Scar's storyline. Now, the train incident with the Blue Squad, I will admit, is mostly forgettable, except for the fact that it is the canon introduction of Roy Mustang, showing off both his skills as a tactician and a frontline badass. Instead, while his Brotherhood intro does cement his place as being the one in charge of the Elric brothers from a military standpoint, his own effectiveness in battle, however, appears quite questionable. Granted, Brotherhood does make up for that many episodes later by giving him one of the most epic moments of awesome, but his introduction is still severely lacking. Honestly, though, all the problems that I have with Brotherhood as far as the story and the characters go can be entirely negated as long as you have either read the manga or have seen the original adaptation. And again, I get that feeling that that was expected. The pacing of those initial episodes is greatly sped up in comparison to later storylines, almost as if the creators knew full well the likelihood of their audience having seen the original or having read the manga. As such, those stories were truncated in order to move on to the content that had never been adapted before. For older fans, you get to new stuff faster. Assuming you're one of the ones to find the early episodes not much but recap, it's all over by around episode 12. Leaving 52 episodes of awesome still to go. However, for any newer fans, there are some stories in those first 12 episodes, specifically anything involving Hughes and the Tucker families, which, quite frankly, deserved better, especially considering how important those narratives are to the other major characters. There are even just minor things as well, such as the appearance of the Gate of Truth, far earlier in the story than even the manga revealed it, as well as how Brotherhood just flat out reveals the allegiance of Fuhrer King Bradley in episode 1. Now, I realize when you give a character the title of Fuhrer, there's going to be some comparisons to Adolf Hitler that are going to happen and you really shouldn't be surprised by. However, it does take quite a bit of time in the manga and the original adaptation to fully flesh out and explain where Bradley's priorities are and where his loyalties lie. Brotherhood? Let's just deeply imply and foreshadow this in episode 1. Because why not? The viewers probably know anyway, right? But enough about the negative, because the remaining 52 episodes of Brotherhood are, quite frankly, amazing. Like, even with the wobbly base that the intro 13 episodes put our characters in, they find their footing almost instantly. And that's not surprising, because the characters have always been something that Fullmetal Alchemist has been praised for. The depths that these characters have is quite astounding, and that's not just reserved for the major characters either. Secondary characters, same thing. You get these characters who are not the Elrics, not Mustang, not villains who get ample time in the spotlight and then just disappear for a while, only for you to think, hey, we haven't seen them for a bit, I wonder what they're up to, only for them to appear soon after. And it doesn't feel forced either. It's not like they were saved to be mini Deus Ex Machina for the plot, as their reintroductions to the plot feel real and organic, like it was planned from the moment that they left. And at the end of it, all of the characters that helped with the plot show up for the conclusion, a conclusion that, quite frankly, is a combination of brilliant and heartbreaking. There's not much else I can talk about without actually getting into, spoiler territory, but the ending is paramount, and I will say that Brotherhood ended really well. I'm just kind of sad that it's over, to be honest. Now, in the interim years between the original adaptation and Brotherhood, I felt that there was a certain amount of decline in the production quality of things that have come out of Bones. Sure, Soul Eater deserves mention as a possible exception to this, but even then, I don't think that it had many times where you're watching the animation and you just think, damn, that's awesome. Brotherhood? Oh, it's not missing those moments at all. The highlights, without a doubt, are the action sequences, regardless of how short or in some cases lengthy they ended up being. Granted, because of that, the animation for this series on the whole is not an absolute pinnacle of animation, though I never expected it to be. In 64 episodes, if there wasn't a drop somewhere, I would have wondered where Bones transmuted the animation funds from. Now, the special effects in particular are vastly improved from what Bones has done before, and possibly since. And as much as I like the explosions from the 2003 series, and I like them a lot, Brotherhood even handled fire better this time around. Though that also helps when it's included in a scene with Mustang being a badass. The intro sequences are magical as well, and if you recall my comments on the intro sequences to the 2003 anime, where I mentioned how over time the animation quality seemed to increase with each new opening, well, with Brotherhood, I'd say that it started off really strong, and then just stayed that way throughout the entire show. The music of the intros, however, are similar to 2003. I really like the first opening, again by Yui, but with each passing episode, I became less and less interested in the music of the new openings. That could just be a testament to the show's story itself, however, as I would rather skip to the episode instead of continually rewatching the same opening again and again. The first one, though, I stand by. I watched it every time, thought it was amazing every time, and personally would have liked it if they just kept the music for every opening and just changed the animation with the introduction of new characters and the like. I know that's probably not the majority opinion, but that's what I think. Soundtrack-wise, where the show excelled was in, I don't know if you would call them themes, but it was those pieces of music that were focused around either one character or one event. In particular, I rather enjoyed the somber chorus in a song called Trisha's Lullaby. It was a piece that was good enough to have several reprisals with a variety of different instruments throughout the show. Now, I need to issue a correction. Back in my top anime backgrounds video, I said that the song Brothers from the original 2003 anime made an appearance in Brotherhood. This, unfortunately, was not true. I got it mixed up in my mind because I could have sworn that I read that there was a Brotherhood version of the song on the internet before, and when I wrote that particular video, I was in the middle of watching the series, so I thought that I just hadn't gotten to it yet, and it was really disappointing when it didn't make it through. I understand why, though. The composers for both shows have vastly different takes on the music of Fullmetal Alchemist, and their works help to highlight the differences in tone between the two shows. 2003 had music that triggers emotion. It's darker, it's very bleak, it's what the series was like. Now, I wouldn't say that Brotherhood's music was more upbeat, but it's a tad more, shall we say, epic in nature. It's more shonen-like, for better or worse. I personally preferred the more emotionally charged music, so like Trisha's theme, but then also I really enjoyed the two Requiem pieces, so like the ones for the Blind Alchemist and the Brigadier General. And again, it does depress me that Brothers wasn't included somewhere, because that song really does just scream Fullmetal Alchemist, but you can't have everything you want, I guess. Like, for example, you can't have Aaron Dismuke as Alphonse anymore. Hey, did you see that segue? Yeah, we're talking about the dub now, if you didn't pick up on that. Now, normally I probably would have just done the same thing here that I did with my explanation of my thoughts on the dub for the 2003 anime. It is really, 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 really good, so just go listen to it. My words can't do it justice, but there was one major change between that dub and this one that deserves mention. See, now when the 2003 dub was made, the character of Alphonse Elric was voiced by this kid named Aaron. Aaron, conveniently at the time, was around the same age as the character Alphonse, so his voice fit perfectly. Unfortunately, in the years between the two dubs, Aaron went through puberty and thus was unable to really do Alphonse anymore. So in Brotherhood, instead, we get Maxie Whitehead doing Alphonse Elric, and guess what? If I didn't point this out, there is a very good chance that you might not have even noticed. I'm not joking either. Maxie sounds amazing and almost identical to how Aaron used to. There were honestly times where I had to sit there and remind myself that it wasn't Aaron doing the voice anymore, because it sounded exactly alike. It was amazing. So yeah, props to you, Maxie. Gold star and all that. Whew. Okay, now, I feel that some people watch Brotherhood and think of it as an all-inclusive series, a sort of replacement for the original that was so revered. Personally, though, I see it more as a continuation, not a replacement or a substitute. It builds off the introduction to the world that the original made and then just owns it. Does it excel over the original? In many ways, yes. In others, not so much, but the great thing is, you don't have to choose. They both exist and they are both marvelous to watch. My only regret is that I have watched both of them. It's done for me. I can't watch anymore. It's over. There's no more, and I'm sad. Like, I suppose I still have The Sacred Star of Milos to watch. That was the movie that came out after Brotherhood, but since that takes place in the timeline of the Brotherhood series and doesn't really happen afterwards. It's more so just prolonging the inevitable for me. But for you, if you have never watched any Fullmetal Alchemist before, I envy you. But I am also excited for you at the same time. You haven't watched Fullmetal Alchemist yet. Do that! You get to experience this story, to witness the life of these characters, and it is a wonder to behold. Now, as some of you know, I have and will continue to recommend that everybody watch the 2003 adaptation of Fullmetal Alchemist before moving on to Brotherhood, but this does come with one major downside. While it would be very easy for me to say that if you've watched the 2003 version, you can skip the first 12 or so episodes of Brotherhood because you have technically seen it before, if you did that, you would miss a lot of foreshadowing that the creators of Brotherhood put into it that didn't exist in the 2003 version. So what this means is that you technically need to slog through those first 13 episodes, and you might get bored of them because you've seen the story before, and if you watch it immediately after watching 2003, then it's very fresh in your mind. Best thing to do, take a break between watching the two. Let the original sink in so that it's there and it's fine, and then watch Brotherhood. And as I have said before, Fullmetal Alchemist means so much to so many people, and I really, really hope that it does or will mean as much to you as it does to me. So with Brotherhood being more of what I loved about the original, I can't give it anything but my highest recommendation. So, as such, I hereby present Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood with the rating of Certified Frosty, a recommendation for only the best of the best and those series too important to ignore. Like, I'd only agree to ignore it on a temporary basis because, like me, you were afraid that once it's finished, it's going to be over, and you just would like to prefer to have at least something there, so that it's not over yet. I understand that, and that's a noble position to have, because I had it for, like, many years. Like, Brotherhood came out, 6 years ago, and I only just recently got around to finishing it, but hey, what you watch and when you watch it is your business. Now, like the 2003 adaptation, Brotherhood has been licensed by Funimation Entertainment and is available from them both for streaming on their website and on DVD and Blu-ray. Though if you are looking to stream them in dub, I hope you have a Funimation or Hulu subscription, because you're going to need one. For alternate anime recommendations, let's go ahead and put in Hunter x Hunter, specifically the 2011 version, but only if watching 148 episodes doesn't feel daunting to you. If it does, go check out Attack on Titan if you haven't already, because in many ways, it's like Fullmetal Alchemist, but for this particular generation of anime fans. At least for now. I know some people will disagree with that statement, but, you know, whatever. And hopefully between those two, you can find something to your liking. And that's it from me. Please subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Follow me on Twitter if you feel so inclined, and hey, if you like what I do here and feel like helping out, please consider going and checking out my Patreon page, and if you feel it within your heart, also consider donating. Very special thanks to Joshua Garcia, Daniel Nye, Nikolai Gray, Lulika Dachi, and Grace Anderson for donating already. You guys are all amazing, and I thank you oh so very much. And until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and others, stay frosty.